Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let We Hear from Doc. I'm your host, Amanda Japal, and with me is Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Claudius Mitchell. So, Dr. Mitchell, let's just jump right into it. There are so many rumors circulating, so many things happening in the country. And my first question to you is what are your thoughts on the perception of the corruption within the police force?
Well, I think whenever there's lack of transparency in the affairs of any activity, then you will hear all sorts of things. And therefore, I think whether these are considered just rumors, this is not the point, because the fact that people are hearing so much of these things that appear not to be right is a clear indication of those who are governing are not paying attention to the affairs of the country and the things that concerns people. It's just like anything else, whether it's the police force, whether it's the Ministry of Works, whether it's in the Ministry of Housing. The situation is the same. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of things. And it's unfortunate because the government must be aware its image is important in the question of how effective it is in governing. And therefore, dealing with issues that concerns people must be very crucial. No, so therefore, I'm very concerned. Our police force clearly is the area that deals with the security of the country. So if there are serious rumors that undermine the confidence in the police force, then clearly it must concern everyone. And particularly the Minister of National Security, who happened to be the Prime Minister. But you're hearing nothing from him. In fact, most times he's more out than in. I heard Brother Dwight Osford in a meeting said something that I thought was very intriguing. He said that the Prime Minister visits Grenada. I thought it would be the other way around, which he visits outside and then comes back in. And that's significant. And it does worry every single citizen of this country. But this is what we have in government. This is what exists. The most unfortunate thing, I'm not hearing, Amanda, when we were in government, and sometimes a little rumor goes, you have all kinds of persons, whether it's such, not just social media. We used to have the media house, so-called Media Houses Association, speaking or writing or on those issues, even when they are not to be true. We used to hear some members of the church community. Well, the trade union was well known. They'll be very active in their voices of things that appear to concern them and the public. The business community, just a social partnership all around the country. But now it's strange that you are not hearing any voices at all. In the face that there are so many issues that should concern people. And when you add that with the economic mess in the country and the fact that so many people are underwater as far as their own livelihood is concerned, you tell yourself that it's unfortunate because the voices of the opposition and MP is important. But when it is seen as only their voices, it appears it's a political matter, not a national matter. And that's not the way. So I think we have to be concerned, and I'm glad you raised this.
Dr. Mitchell, the discussion around lowering the age of civil responsibility, that has sparked a lot of debate in Grenada. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I think that there should have been much more consultation with the public on the matter of this. Um, whether it is something that is necessary or not, it is something that concerns a lot of parents and a lot of persons and in the country as a whole. And I do not believe that the government should have moved immediately to just bring something to Parliament, something as sensitive as this, without appearing to consult with the people throughout the length and breadth of the country. But that is the nature of the NDC government. Whether it's this issue or other issues, there's usually no consultation at all. Just like to get a paper of a motion or bill going to Parliament. That's what happens. In our time, when we done this, you would have voices out there making noises and saying, well, we need time. In fact, when this thing came up, we in Parliament said that the sensitive nature of this requires that we should hold consultation with a wider cross-section of the country, and that we had not done so because we had just received the information, the bill. So it's a pattern. That is the style of the present government, and I assume it has to be the style of the present Prime Minister, and so on. But it is something that it really requires, because I think people have to understand the government, yes, it represents the people as an authority in the country. But the government is a government for a particular period. And they can make far-reaching decisions that affect the country and the citizens for a longer period of time, past their period of service. And therefore we should just sit down and allow them to do whatever they wish, or to make whatever changes where they are, in fact, it's important or not. I think it's something that, in other words, one cannot blame the government by itself. We have to blame ourselves as citizens for not speaking out sufficiently on critical matters that has a lot to do with the country as a whole and its present situation and the future of the country. So I'm very concerned, and I'm calling on people or country or persons or people to be far more involved and far more aware of what is taking place in the country and what is being done in your name. And I think that is something that I'm very concerned.
Some argue that the issue in Grenada today isn't only economical, but is very emotional, and that there is a lack of empathy from leadership itself. How important is empathy in leadership, especially during tough times?
Well, whatever area of service one is involved in, whether it's in sports, whether it's business, whether it's culture, and whether it's education, whatever area of service, and particularly so in the political life of the people, the issue of empathy is crucial. Because if you're in any area of leadership and you do not show empathy for the members of the organization, you're not going to be as effective in your decision making and the results of the decision making as you should be. So it is clear that there is little of that coming from the leadership of the country at this time. It seems like people assume I have power and I'm going to use it. You remember the present Prime Minister, when he became leader of his political organization, he said that the previous NDC leadership did not know how to use power. He did say that, and that he will show them how to use power. He said that these were quotes from him, and he's living up to his word. He's certainly making decisions as how he feels, not how he thinks that the people support, give support to those things, those decisions. And it's a clear indication of the mindset of the individual. And one has to understand that. So you cannot see that he came to us with one hand and using another hand in a general sense. In some of the areas he did, but in some areas like this, he's clearly stated that he's going to use power. and not do like the previous leadership of the National Democratic Congress, and certainly like the NNP. Over 23 years, the NNP governed the country, because we always believe, and I firmly believe, that when you're in a position of leadership of any area, that you must have the feeling of the people. Not that if you have a critical decision to make, that everyone has to say yes. Because sometimes, because you're in a position of leadership after consultation, the decision is still left up to you. And if you believe that that is best for, in the case of the politics, the country, and that even some of your own supporters or elements in the society do not support, you have a responsibility to still make those decisions and take the consequences that comes with it. In other words, if you lose some support by that decision, then that's life. Because leadership does not necessarily have to get the voice and support of everyone to be able to take a decision in the interest of the vast majority. And leaders sometimes have to have a vision. I've made a decision already when I was in government. I remember one case when I imported stones to get a project going in the country. We did not have stone in the country. Crushed stones, I mean. That was early in my term as Minister of Works. And that was a very unpopular decision. And I got licks left, right, and center around the country. But I was not making that decision for myself. I was making on the basis of what is best for the country. Because had I not made that decision, if I had not made that decision, it would mean the over 6 million euros we would have lost it. That's for building the Eastern Main Road that the European Union was funding, because they said they had given us sufficient time to have these materials, and we were in the government before that. This is another government, but it's the country. They're not talking about who was the government, they're talking about they gave Grenada sufficient time. And this is the agreement you made to have the crossroad, and we will provide the funding for employment, labor, and technical work, and so on. So in effect, I weighing the consequences. I said, listen, people have to judge me and that decision that I made, that I would have made, not on whether they accepted it and how understand it, but whether it was in the best interest of the country. And I remember in discussing the decision with so many of the country's different persons or groups in the country, I said to them, in fact, even among my own cabinet members, there were strong opposition. I got support from the leadership, and I was able to implement or to follow. I said to them, listen, what is the alternative decision you would have made? I know it's unpopular. I know we are getting licks over it. But tell me something. What would you have done? No, not a word. So I said, you only would not have done it because you're afraid of the licks. Remember, we were not voted in just to satisfy every person in the country, but to take a decision that is best for the country as a whole, not for myself. Because if I was thinking of myself, I would not have made it, because you have to take a lot of licks in the process. But I then said to them, we've just come into government. We're not into it. Let's assume we're thinking personal and selfishly. Because I want to be practical with some members of my cabinet. I said, remember, right now, people voted for us to govern. We're just in the first year of a 5-year cycle. When we have to go to the country 4 years or 5 years from now, do you think people will remember the decision that we made then that they didn't like? Or they would accept it based on the results of that decision? When they start driving on good roads and driving on the fact, you think they would go back and say, well, I didn't like the decision, but they would say, I like the road that were built. So that if you're thinking selfishly, and I we should not be thinking so, but selfishly. But I was just trying to be practical with those who, and I think this is what leadership is all about. You not always have to satisfy everyone. You have to show empathy to everyone's views, and I agree with this. But you cannot satisfy everyone's feelings if you're a serious leader in anything that you're doing. But to make decisions without no attempt at understanding the feelings of the people, because sometimes someone opposes your viewpoint, and sometimes they just want to know that you appreciate their concern. So you show them that you understand their concern, and you're sorry you differ from how they feel, and proceed in the best interest of the overall benefit of the country as a whole. And that to me is all decisions should be made as leaders. And I think that's not just in somebody in a religious community as leader. They have to make decisions like that sometimes, not necessarily to get to have the support of the vast majority of your congregation. Sometimes you have to make a decision that some of them didn't see initially, but later on.
Dr. Mitchell, we're hearing more about people turning to gambling as a way to cope or an escape from the economic reality. How serious do you think this problem is in Grenada right now?
But it must be a concern because it is a fact that a lot of the young people, they have to be engaged in some activity because you can't spend the day all the day doing nothing. So if they're not given opportunity in a positive way to be involved, whether it's opportunity for job, for training for job, or whether it's sports, whether it's cultural activities, anything that helps to build them and make them feel that they are, in fact, making a contribution in some positive way, they will find alternative. And what's going to be the alternative? There's always room for drug activity in the country. Is that what we want to leave them to? There's always room. Now, some people might just be playing dominoes or cards on the side of the road or wherever for social benefit. But some of them might be saying, look, I still have to make a living. So I sometimes ask the young men, I say, but none of you working. Who is winning what? I don't know who's having fun. And they would laugh when I speak to them like that. So, but it's not good for the country. And it's not good. It has a lot to do with the feeling that the lack of feeling that anyone cares, like a feeling that there's nothing out there for them positively. And there's a growing concern among the young people. And we have to accept what is so sad is that this present government is creating that atmosphere of despair among the young population. Got the votes of those people for government. The majority of voters above the age of 30 onwards voted for the new National Party. The statistics will show that. But the majority of voters under 30 voted for the National Democratic Congress because the leader appears to be younger and he was fresh, unlike myself, who was known to be more over a long period of time. And he made a lot of promises, and he had good big talk, and so on, and therefore he was, to some of the young people, was excited. So they went and they fell for it. And look what's happening to the country today. He does not care. He's always out. He's never in. And you don't see him going and engaging these young people on the block or on the ground to find out how they're feeling. Because that's, as far as he's concerned, he's now in charge. And therefore he can make decisions as he sees it, not as people expect him to.
Many young people feel discouraged by the challenges that they see in politics and leadership right now. What would you say to remind them that service still matters?
Well, service will always matter, even when you're in a period of feeling a level of despair. The fact is, you have family members, If you are a citizen and you have some element of patriotism, I don't even care about your own family and the community you live. You still have to have, despite the serious concern that exists and the feeling that you're not being utilized, you have to show that interest. Yeah, therefore, they just staying, I can understand a lot of the young people feel, a lot of the people in the country. But remember, we still have a society that we have to live in, unless you want to just disappear, get out of the country and forget the country. And I don't think that's a viable option at all. So I think it's something that we have to be involved to some extent. I know telling someone to get involved directly in the politics is not an easy thing. I could understand that, and that's why the wrong approach that those of us in the political arena go telling just any young people let's meet to talk about politics does not make sense. We have to reach out to them on the basis of what are their interests, what are the issues concerning them, and in the process of discussion, the issue of the political arena and its impact and the way they feel would be heard. And I think that is, to me, that is the approach. But any direct approach is we must be involved and you can't allow the situation to go. They won't listen. And you have to understand that. You can have been beaten several times before where promises were made by political persons and other people, not just politics, whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, promises have been made. People, young people and others, and it evaporating overnight. And so on, when people get into the position where they can make a difference. And so on. And I think these are things that must be considered.
What advice would you give to a young political leader about staying grounded and connected to the struggles of the people they represent?
Well, if he wants to be successful, if you want to out your political life, well, don't be. But if you want to be successful and you don't stay grounded and you don't show an interest in what concerns the people, then I don't see how you expect to last. And I'm not just talking about being in government. If you're in opposition and you hope to get enough support of people to 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 take the position of governing, then you have to be grounded. What else can you be? And therefore it's so crucial, especially someone who gets into politics and you get into government. That's when people judge you. Because when you're campaigning, you can always make nice promises.
Yeah.
You will do this, you will do that. It's when you get there, then people will judge you. I remember in my situation, I've been abroad for years when I came back home and ran for office the first time in '84. When I won the election and I won my 60% vote, 40% was against me, I became Minister of Works, running the basis ministry. In those days, all the roads were bad. There was no electricity in the country. Only 45% of the country had electricity. Most in my own village, I was Minister of Water. And I didn't have water. I didn't have pipe of water. For 90% of the year in my village or in my home. The telephone service was an antiquated crossbar system that the PRG had bought, and it was outdated. So I had a massive amount of work to do as Minister of Works and so on. But I said, in the face of this, if I spend all my time just dealing with the problems of the infrastructure that I just mentioned, and don't have any contact with the people that voted for me, who might be looking for some services in a direct way, which may not necessarily be related to the telephone and electricity and water and roads, then I'll be in trouble the next 5 years from now, the next election. So what I did was, all my busy schedule, traveling all over the country on a regular basis, I decided every Thursday I'm going to take off from the ministry and go out in my constituency, house to house. And so I spent Thursday mornings in my constituency. And I spent Thursday afternoon roaming the country as Minister of Infrastructure. And sometimes, Amanda, because those days I mentioned, telephone did not work. So when I left and we went out in the field, there was no way I could be in contact with my ministry, or they couldn't contact me because the phones were not working. We didn't have cell phone in those days. And so what I used to do, I would, if I'm in September, I would send a message with a busman down to my office, and they would send back a message. That was the response. That was 1985, 1986. Period. That was the level of the lack of infrastructural activities at the time, and so on. But within 5 years, as we mentioned, not only I was able to improve the infrastructure, which building roads, and we didn't have the resources that we have now in the country, so you had to do a lot of work with much less resources than we had at this time going forward. And with the 5 years, we were able to bring modern telephone system, the first in the region, the digital telephone system, to the OECS. That was chairman of the OECS at the time, and we later was one of the first countries to receive it. And the electricity was moved from 45% coverage in just 5 years. When we went back to elections 5 years time, to almost 96% of the country, 96, 97, can't remember the exact number, of electricity all over the country, villages, and water. Water was more difficult because water is far more costly to bring. In fact, what people don't know is that to bring one development water service to a particular area, right? Especially if you have to build the dam system, and then the pipes have to run all over the country because the pipes are more rotten and those always existed for years. It will cost you more to bring water to one village if you have to do all the stuff with you than it would cost you to put electricity to almost half of the country. That's a fact. So it was a major challenge with water, but we did significant improvement in the water service. In my own village, didn't get water, and the solution was solved in just the 4 years afterwards. We were able to do it when we returned the government in 95. We were able to bring water to the north of St. George's, Mount Morris, and my own village, Happy Hill and Blandwall and Cottonwood and so on. But what happened? Because of being able to separate my work as minister and also my work as a constituency representative, knowing that I still have to be in touch. So spending time with those people, going house to house and find out how they're doing and listening to them and so on. And when you can't solve a problem, you don't lie to them, tell them exactly the situation. By the time I was going back to the village, by the time the election was coming, I was able to come to visit those homes 3 times. In fact, by the time I was going back, by the time I reached back, I was, don't forget us, man. We know, we don't worry, everything all right with us. It's on. We know you can't do everything. And the party that I was involved in was split in 1984. Because remember, in 1984, I ran with George Rizan, who was head of the NDP party when we came together. And Robert Blaze was the head of the GFB, and he was the head of the government at the time. By the time we went back in 1990 to the polls, Rizan left the NNP and formed his own party, which is how the NDC. That's how NDC was formed. And he took some of the support that I had from him out of the 60% I had. Similarly, Blaze fired me in government because he felt that I should not be running against him and so on. So he fired me, and that was his right to do. So I lost some of his support in the constituency. So I should have lost the election in 1995, 1990 when I ran again, because the party split up 3 ways. And Alexis was also a key member. He went on his own also with Prasan. So, but I won 70% of the votes. So I increased my support. What happened was a lot of the people who supported it, the 40% that I won in 1984, who ran against who voted against me. So people supported Sir Eric Matagari. A lot of them, because of my relationship with them, and Sir Eric was himself was softening his position against me. I got a lot of their support. So I was able to get 70%. And that's the lowest amount of votes I got since 1990. Because every time on the last election, I got 80% of the votes. And before it reached the peak in 1999, I got 91% of the votes. So I'm making that point. It's not about boasting. It's just saying that you can do your service, your national responsibility, which is like governing the country. But at the same time, you must respect the rights of the people who voted for you or supporting you, to meet with you, see you, and listen to them and help to deal with the problems that they have. You will not be able to solve all their problems. And you don't lie to them. You don't try to fool them. But be honest and open with them, and they understand. I always say to people when people tell me Grenadians are ungrateful because they didn't vote for us. For example, last election when we lost, some people tell me, oh, the people wicked, that is it. I said, no. We have to accept that the people felt there was need to change. We have to accept that if we felt we should have been elected, we were at fault in not messaging appropriately or communicating appropriately. And the other side beat us on the basis of that message. And also we have to accept there were weaknesses during our period going into the election from the representation that we had in different constituencies in some areas. And we have to accept that we were at fault. I always say one thing I always say, Amanda, it's a message for a young politician, I think, going forward. And anytime something negative happens to you, that's something that you wish to have, and you did not receive it, never blame the persons who were making the decision and did not support you first. Always look at yourself first and examine your weaknesses before you start apportioning blame to other persons. That is something I feel I always carry in my whole life. And that has nothing to do with just politics. If you're playing in a cricket team and you lose, don't just blame the opposition. Look at your own weaknesses why you didn't. If you are involved in business and it did not succeed, don't say that the other fella lied on your services and blah, 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 blah. You can always find reason to blame the next one. Always examine your own style, your own management, your own service. When you are able to do that and accept your part of the reason for not getting the support, then you can look at how the others meet you based on the different messages and approach and services they offer. So that's a philosophy I think every human being must adopt. Always examine yourself, because the worst thing you can do is to blame everybody else and tell yourself you did your best. If your bullshit, I can't do it.
Doc, I'm listening to your stories, right? And I'm amazed. You've been through so many things politically. How did you stay focused? How did you stay so level-headed to reach thus far? Because after all that you've been through, you still became Prime Minister of Grenada.
Well, I think first of all, as I said earlier on, if you approach the political life or the personal life the way I'm talking about you, remember, people are also judging and assessing you as a person. So if you approach things in an honest way and you admit your mistakes and your faults, people are very forgiving. I always believe that. And I think this is probably one of the main reasons for my endurance, political endurance. Um, I remember many times when issues happened and people started attacking me for certain things. I examined the issues and I accepted some responsibility and say, but that other side was not me. So the lies were here. But look at my role that I played in that decision. Um, and I think being honest and being open and being willing to accept when you're wrong is a very powerful approach to anything you're doing in life. I think I may have mentioned that story to you before, but it's worth repeating it in the context of the discussion. I recall when I just got into government in 1995, the public service was definitely against me. They did not expect me to win. So I had great hostility when I walked into the ministries. And I remember when I attended the Prime Minister office the first day, and I was coming into the government offices. You won't believe it. But all I got was the doors closing. You know, the devil is out. So I remember I got into the Prime Minister's office. But the doors were just closing. And so when I sat in there, I thought, where is the permanent secretary? Where is the staff? They were in hiding. So there was one public servant. I can't say the public servant was supported, but at least accepted responsibility. He's a senior public servant who had a lot of history working with various government. He came in and said, what was the situation? And I told the person, I don't want to call the sex because people would know what I'm talking about. And I told the individual about my challenges. And they said, okay, I will move and deal with it. And they were able to bring a lot of people there. And I remember one young staff member, a young lady, one day she came in to see me. And I said to her, where were you? And she said to me that I was in my office, but I locked up. I said, well, why? She said, well, she heard that I was coming to get rid of her. And not over the devil come to mash up the place and so on. And therefore she was protecting herself. And I said, my friend, I don't know you. You're a public servant. You have your responsibility. I don't know whether you supported my party in elections or not, and that's not important. You are now a public servant and you have to serve the government every day. And I want to tell you this. Because not because of the way I treated you. I'm one of the most faithful public servants that I am. To the point that if I had to message to go to the bank, I would send my own personal message. That's how close we became. You know, doing something for me that I would not trust anybody else just like that to do. And so and that was the case with a number of public servants in that particular period of time. And I value this. So I was telling the story about when that's one aspect, but there was another aspect. So I was so married to many of the top public servants, I decided the public service commission send a few of them home on holiday. It was, in other words, I behave like a cricketer when you're reaching the wicket and you see the ball, you don't understand where it's turning, leg break or go play or outbreak. You just swing your bat and make a ball. So I made a ball. And I remember a few with a couple of religious persons who were concerned about my welfare, my approach to governance, and I really thought that I was not the person that acted the way they thought they should act. They came to see me and they told me that it was wrong. And they pointed out a number of the persons that were about 500 public servants. And they told me about 3 of them and I made a serious mistake, but speak not like that. I called them back in when I checked it out and apologized to them personally. But I thought since the decision I made was public decision, I waited for Thanksgiving of that year. And the Thanksgiving service was broadcast live on all radio station and TV at the time, and apologized each one of them publicly and said that I made a mistake and I wanted to correct it. And these people turned out to be one of the best public servants that served my government. I cannot tell you they voted for me in the election, because you don't always think about votes. You must think of how people respect you. And I think they respected me. And I remember in one case, a certain politician opposed to me, used an occasion publicly and attacked me for sending one of the public servants, the senior public servants, home. And the public servants called him and said, "Stop it, don't call my name. The man already apologized publicly. What else you want him to do? So please don't, when you're talking about actions you took, please don't use my name. You can use others as you wish if they want you to use, but please don't use my name." And she made that public servant may have been voted for that still, but she made it very clear that I do not want my name mixed up with what is specific. When somebody makes a mistake and they apologize with me, how do you go about still knocking them? You yourself will look bad. I just say, I'm making all this thing to explain how you mentioned about endurance. I think humility is the most major characteristic. And for young politicians like yourself going forward, always remain on the ground. Always stay humble and always be prepared to examine your own actions. And if you find some of it may not be the best, to make the changes necessary. And if you make a mistake, don't lie about it. Don't try to pick up stories to explain it. Because you're not perfect. I'm not. No one is. People understand this. So when you say I made a mistake, nothing is wrong with that. The people respect you, and you go up a notch in people's perception. And that, I think, is a major thing for any politician. The politician that goes and making every time people say something about him, start lying and making all kinds of funny stories and talking down to everybody, that's the politician that won't last. The politician that lasts for a long period is the one that be humble and have empathy, who shows interest in people, and is prepared to accept when it's wrong. All right.
Very inspiring words. Dr. Mitchell, we're about to wrap up. It is Child's Month. Is there anything you want to say to our nation's children?
No, well, the children will be one day the future leaders of the country. So if we do not treat them well, or look after their interests and provide guidance, and of course motivate them, then we are in fact doing something against our own selves. Because as we get older and they now become the leaders, the decisions that they make based on the experiences when we were there would affect us positively or negatively. So I wish the nation's children the best as we celebrate Child Month going forward.
Happy Child's Month. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks, Doc. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Show them